this is ET Now. You're with the India Development Debate, the only debate on news television that puts the spotlight on development issues. I'm Sandeep. Gurumurthy joining in from the news centre in Mumbai. Joining me in Delhi is my colleague and co-anchor Supriya Shrinate. Straight to the big debate tonight. The world's biggest sporting spectacle has just begun as the likes of Christiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi and Neymar Jr. replace their club jerseys with the national colours. Millions of Indian soccer fans have hardly anything to cheer about. For them, including the 17,692 football lovers who spend their life savings to watch the game live in Russia, World Cup 2018 is a grim reminder of Indian soccer's sorry state of affairs. Consider this, India currently ranks a poor 97 in the latest FIFA rankings, a far cry from the golden days of 50s when we qualified for the World Cup and even stood fourth in the Melbourne Olympic Games in 1956.
Indeed. So what can explain India's sorry state of affairs as far as the most beautiful game on the planet is considered? Some blame it on the physique of our players, while some others point the fingers at poor infrastructure and training facilities. But according to international coaches and technical directors, it is really the lack of vision at the government level and high political interference in team selection that has killed the game. For a country that boasts of its rapid economic progress, FIFA 2018 is a wake-up call. In a very special edition of the India Development Debate this evening, right here on ET Now, we discuss tonight the problems and possibilities for India as far as the beautiful game of soccer is concerned. And joining us on the show is a very special panel. It's my pleasure to call on the show Anirudh Thapa, Indian football player, Scott O'Donnell, former technical director of the AIFF, Viren Raskina, CEO at Olympic Gold Quest, former captain of the Indian hockey team, Alex Ambrose, former Indian international and assistant coach, Mumbai City Football Club, and of course Indrajit Hazra, editor of Views, The Economic Times. Thanks each one of you for being with us. And Scott, if I may really begin talking to you about the first question. Why don't we have a football culture in the country, even though there is so much of excitement and interest in the beautiful game? Look at the kind of euphoria that people have all around to watch the World Cup. But why is there no culture for soccer, no culture for sport really at large?
Well, I think culture takes time. And most of those countries at the World Cup, which starts tonight, most of them, football is the main sport, with the exception of Australia. I mean, I'm in Australia at the moment, and the World Cup's important, but it's not the main thing. There's still all the other sports going on, and it's a bit similar in India. Obviously, cricket's the number one sport, but there's other sports there. But it's got you just can't force it in short terms. I think AFF has made a great start, but it's going to take a long time. And I know when I was travelling all over the country that it's the younger players that were really embracing football. So we've got to get them young and give them a good experience in playing football. And hopefully over time, there will become a real football culture in India.
Anirudh, if you can hear me, I was asking I was asking what is it that will take for us to develop a football culture in the country, even though there's sort of so much of interest in the game, Anirudh?
Yeah. For me, I think so it's developing because this year, 2018, is a great start for Indian football and people are following it. People are following more of football. It's their football is growing in India, I think so. And if it just keep on going like this and like the performance of Indian football, right now it's good. So if it goes like this, then the growth of football will be much more.
Okay, so it all depends on how people continue to like football and the culture goes on, and I think there needs to be more players like Anirudh Thapa to take on this beautiful game. It's work in progress according to Anirudh. And Anirudh, just stay with us because I'm going to go across to Alex Ambrose. And Alex, is the problem money in football? Cricket obviously gets a disproportionate amount of money, funds, endorsements. Look at the big bucks that chases that game. Is that the real reason for lack of a football culture in India? The kind of money that's chasing cricket is perhaps not chasing football. Alex?
I believe it wouldn't be fair to compare cricket with football when it comes to money, because it's right now we have a lot of investors, and right from the ISL that has come, we have so many investors that have invested in the clubs and huge amount of money. And what we have seen that things have been changing in the past 4 to 5 years tremendously. We have seen the change, international players coming to India, playing. And I, being part of this club, Mumbai City FC, for so long, around 4 years with the club, there have not been any kind of complaint when it comes to infrastructure and built up or any kind of lack of facilities. So I think the money, to some extent, yes, but what we have to see more about is whether the money that is in has been invested in the right way or no.
That's a fair point. Viren, I want to get you in because you engage a lot with corporates in your capacity as a CEO of Olympic Gold Quest. Not only do you look for young talent, but you also look to get them funded by corporates. Is money really a big issue? Is that a factor at all? Do you believe that corporate, because, you know, Alex was speaking about the experience with ISL, you've got a lot of money in Indian soccer with the Indian, soccer league coming in. Is that a issue at all in, you know, which comes in the way of creating a soccer culture in the country?
Sandeep, I personally believe that money is not a problem if a sports federation has a right plan. The problem with most federations in our country is that we go to corporates with a begging bowl. We don't go to them with a proper plan. And I think if there's the right plan, credibility of the people involved, you have transparency and accountability, and if you show performance, I think then funds will never be a problem for any sport. If you look at the last decade in Indian sport, 10 years back, the IPL started in 2008, and today in so many sports there are various leagues, right, from ISL to the Indian Badminton League, Kabaddi League, Wrestling League, Table Tennis League, etc. And I think that's a very good sign for the other sports. When I say other sports, is other than cricket, but we must also remember that just having a strong league is not the only ingredient that goes into the mix of building a world champion like sport or team or individual player. There are many things: a proper organization of the sport, having a good strong national federation, organizing national camps, grassroots developing, coaching. I think coaching is really a big factor. So there are many factors that go into building sport, that go into building the culture of a sport, and we must ensure that all these factors are taken care of if we have to bring other sports anywhere close to cricket. All these take time, and like I said, if we have the right plan in place, then corporate India will definitely be willing to support Indian sport.
Okay. Indy, you interact a lot with Indian industry. I mean, at economic terms, we've got a pulse on what Indian industry is doing. Is corporate India willing to be a part of this beautiful story of Indian soccer? And the other question is that India now has under 16, under 18 and national leagues. Why haven't we been able to leverage these leagues really as far as football and soccer in India is concerned?
Well, to sort of tackle your first question, I think there's a lot of interest, growing interest that corporates are showing, especially towards football, and for two reasons. One is that, you know, it has that international element to it. Earlier on, I think, 20 years back, 30 years back, especially in the pre-cable era, like football was kind of isolated in, pockets like Kerala and Goa and Bengal. But I think once it got sort of connected, two things happened. One was that we kind of realized that Indian football is playing a very different variety of the game than somebody playing in, either Arsenal or in Barcelona. But over the last, I would say, 5 to 10 years, corporates are much more interested, especially because of, popular interest, especially in the international variety of the game. But I might be a bit cynical here, but most corporates are also looking for a kind of finished product. They're not that much willing, not necessarily in terms of money only, but in terms of time. And whether it's a footballing culture or whether it's, the quality of the game, a sport like football, or for that matter, any kind of sport, competitive sport, it takes time. The return of investment is going to be not going to be in the next 5, 10, or sometimes 15 years. That is something in which I have spoken to people who are much more interested in perhaps going for a sort of PPP model in terms of partnering with various sort of sporting bodies within the football ecosystem that India has, the government in. And but it's a tricky thing because anything that's governmental here, I mean, we have that, we call it the sort of Air India syndrome. Like if they have a part of it, they probably want to start picking, I'm exaggerating a bit, but not too much. They probably want to pick players in the team and intervention. So there is a problem, and I think there's a fundamental problem of whether we really want to have a sort of footballing nation in that sense.
Okay,
we are a great footballing spectator nation already, but whether we're,
absolutely, we're a great football spectator
what
nation.
Was the second question? Sorry.
Induji, just give me a second. We'll come back to that point. I want to get in Anirudh Thapar on an important point that you were making, and earlier that was made in the show on the impact of what has changed in the last 4-5 years. And Anirudh, the impact of the ISL. And since you were a part of the ISL as well, what kind of an impact has that had on the game, and why is it that we've not able to leverage that success, more smartly, or do you think it's going to take time?
Like ISL is like growing a lot in India. ISL has helped Indian football a lot, I think so, because the quality of football has increased. Because before I-League was there, and now it's ISL and the quality of football. Because with ISL, the infrastructure has also grown with every club and the ground. So I think so. Like players we are getting in ISL. The quality of football is much more growing in India.
Is there a good young talent in India, Scott? And do we have an institutional mechanism to tap into this talent at, say, an under 17, under 7, under 16 levels?
Well, how do we know? Because there's nowhere for them to play. So it's all well and good people saying we should have a scouting system. Where do the scouts go and watch the games? Where do they go and identify these kids unless it's in competitive games? So there is a scouting network there. There was a scouting network at the time I was there. But my question to people is, where do these scouts go and watch? They just go down to the local park and pick out players playing social football? There's got to be some sort of organisation as well. So there's got to be a venue for the scouts to go and watch, a platform for the scouts to go and watch these players perform. And the best way of doing that is in competitive fixtures. And there's some states, and I know Mizoram have always been very proactive in terms of developing their young players and providing opportunities. But just before I left India, we launched the baby leagues, which isn't expensive, which is giving an opportunity, basically copying the model that they have in South America, where the kids get to play competitive games, 4-a-side, 5-a-side. Doesn't cost much, but it gives them opportunities to play, and that doesn't exist in many places in India, unfortunately.
Viren, I want you to react to that, because scouting has to start early, as early as 6-7 years, select the ones who show promise and keep them together for long enough. I mean, there are no two ways about it, isn't it? I mean, how difficult is it to identify raw young talent and then develop it? I mean, you've done that, or you do that at OGQ, but even in the case of soccer, how tough is that? And in some sense, is that the biggest challenge for soccer as well?
I sort of tend to agree with Scott as well as not agree with him on two issues. So I agree with him on the fact that there are no regular organized competitions in this country, not just football, but across sports. And again, the national sports federations in various sports, there are almost 65 different national sports federations recognized by the government, whose job and responsibility is to organize age group competitions right from your under 10 right up to under 21 before they go into the seniors. But unfortunately, that's only on paper, and reality is very different. Having said that, I think sort of new research in sport over the last few years also says that we should not push kids too hard into a very competitive training environment right from a very early age, and maybe the better way to go about it is to expose them to various sports, give them the opportunity to play various sports up to say the age of 13 or 14 before they eventually get into their main sport. Having said that, giving kids the opportunity to play and having the infrastructure, the playgrounds to play, that is the most critical thing that is lacking in the country, especially in a city like Mumbai, where kids just don't have the place to play. And with great difficulty, I have managed to enroll my daughter into a school that has playgrounds. But most schools in Mumbai today don't have playgrounds. I was lucky to be part of a very old Jesuit school called St. Stanislaus that had a hockey ground, and because of that I could get a chance to play hockey, but most kids don't have that luxury in a place like Mumbai. So giving kids the opportunity to play sport, and you and me as parents and schools encouraging sport, that is going to be the critical factor to get a much broader base of kids playing sport. Otherwise we're just talking and not really doing anything about it.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I couldn't agree with you more there. I don't think our kids can only go to school to study. I think playing is as important. We can't be obsessed with their coaching classes and everything. After school hours, they have to be out there to play. There's a reason why our hashtag says Khelo India. But Alex, coming to you, how can we get local bodies and communities more involved as far as sport orientation and everything is concerned? We see a lot of that happening to places that Scott referred to earlier, in Northeast, in Mizoram in particular. This happens a lot. How do we get this engagement of the local bodies, the communities to get kind of involved to foster this culture, to identify talent, to foster this culture, to nurture that sort of talent?
Well, I believe this process has already begun, but it's not out yet. But we have seen the clubs connecting with the local federation, like for example the Western Indian Football Federation. They are focusing a lot on the grassroots football, encouraging kids, the clubs sponsoring jerseys and football kit to kids, to all the municipal schools in Mumbai. And we have coaches, we have grassroots programs for the coaches, like coach the coaches, education program for the coaches, as well as for teachers and PE department education teachers. And in this process, I believe it has begun, but then what we are looking at is it's just too early. It's about giving them some more time. Well, since this process has begun in the past 2 years, I believe, where clubs are, like for example Mumbai City and the local federation together with many other clubs getting involved in the grassroots development, trying to have a team on all different stages. Like Mumbai, right now we are running the baby league. We see many clubs participating in the baby league. It's been wonderful, but this thing just has to grow as of now. What I believe is this has to be well monitored. It's not just we begin and that's it. It has to be well monitored. Everybody has to be everyone has to work as one unit in order to have that kind of success.
You're right. Soccer is a game that needs a certain amount of obsession, isn't it, Indy? I read this quote which said that, God has given you legs to play soccer. I mean, as a nation, there has to be that level of obsession. And what I'm trying to understand is, why are we not able to channelize the phenomenal amount of interest, the amount of people who will be watching soccer in this country, or just the sheer interest that people have for Premier League or for, or for leagues otherwise around the world? Why is it that at a community level, at a school level, we're not able to channelize that energy into creating a sporting culture? Because no matter how hard we try, if it's not going to come top down, there's a way to make it, happen bottom up.
Absolutely. What we have been doing is right now, recently we had the Intercontinental Cup and we had Sunil Chetri urging people, all the fans, to come and watch the game. We had a full house there, a beautiful atmosphere. We saw children, parents, and you have relatives of the players, families, everybody coming together to cheer the national team. It was a wonderful sight there, and this is how it's going to work when we have the federation organizing tournaments, not only for the senior teams as well as for the youth teams. The moment you have tournaments for the youth teams, there is a certain way of development, and that is where the parents and the families are engaged. Then the friends of those players, the families, they all get along, and this whole process, like I said earlier, it has to come together, right from the federation, right from the state associations, the clubs together, academies together, and that's where the word is spread, and football is spread all around in this way.
Okay, Scott, I have to ask you. Sunil Chhetri had to put out a very emotional plea out there. He had to plead football fans to buy tickets ahead of the India-Kenya match so that the stands are filled. Will viewer interest make a difference? The moment there's greater viewer appetite, the point that Sandeep was raising, the money will flow in and that will create an investment pool to promote games. Do you believe that is what perhaps will be the game changer as far as football is concerned? The more people watch, the more money will flow in. So it already boils down to viewer interest.
Well, it's a bit sad that the national team captain has to put a video out on social media asking for people to come and support the national team. People should want to come and support the national team, and from what I read and watched, there was good support there in the Mumbai football arena, which is great. But there's great support in the ISL as well, in the ISL games and some of the I-League games. But that's got to come naturally. You can't force people to do things. You can't. They've got to want to come to the games because they love football. They're passionate about it. And the kids have to eat, sleep and breathe football. And that's what happens in the South American countries and in the European countries. That's what happens. The kids have one goal, and that's to play for their national team. They want to play football 7 days a week. And as I said, we have the same issue here in Australia where we have so many other sports to choose from that we don't have that passion everywhere where the kids eat, breathe and sleep football. So we've got to try and create that, and you can't force it. They've got to want to do it. And if you provide a platform where the kids are enjoying, they'll keep coming back. So it's not, there's no quick fix. We can't all of a sudden create a football culture. It's got to be developed, and it has to come from within. It's got to be intrinsic motivation from the point of the players.
Okay. Indy, the question of course will have to be that, do you believe this appeal, and it created quite a furore, I think Virat Kohli came in and Sachin Tendulkar came in and there were counter appeals made, but isn't it sad that it took an emotional plea from the national soccer captain to get spectators to the ground? And what is the best way to correct this?
Well, I think one has to sort of register the fact that there's a difference between what people want things to be and what is. And I see no real harm or that much of it being an issue that Sunil Chhetri sort of came on social media and actually implored. I mean, it's unfortunate, but the context is that's how it would have been if there would have been perhaps not that many people in the stands. I mean, so I think whatever buttons need to be pressed to sort of bring up people, not just, I mean, there is an automatic sort of critical mass which is watching the best football in the world, whether it's Champions League, whether it's the World Cup. I think this is a different ball game. This is about like, also watch us, because as Sunil Chhetri rightly says, there is that question. Okay, I'm coming here. I'm being sort of asked to come here by the Indian football captain. I'm going to come. What happens to the second match, third match, fourth match? What happens when people don't ask? So I think there needs to be a kind of a more permanent solution, which is essentially again what somebody in the panel said. Bringing it from the school level. I mean, induct it so that it becomes a kind of obsession. I think cricket was also not. It didn't kind of fall from the sky. And I think I've spoken to a few people from various leagues, whether it's the Bundesliga, whether it's the Premier League. One thing both the league people were telling me that, sometimes you just need one kind of Indian player who makes it in the big stage. And then, I mean, that's how psychology works. So essentially, if like 83 worked for us in cricket, I mean, there was a cricketing culture before that, but there was a kind of tip-off moment there when, and then later on, every parent wanted their kid to be a Sachin Tendulkar, so they sent them to a coaching camp. So that stage didn't come about overnight. It came about after there was this demand for, you know, kids to be loving the game. In this case, kids love watching the game now. They love rattling out who's wearing which jersey, who's going to play. But when it comes to actually footballing India, there is a gap. And I'm sad to say, but like I'm a Mohun Bagan supporter. I find it far more difficult to get a jersey of my size, even in Calcutta, than getting a Atletico de Kolkata one. And that's, you know, I mean, this is not sort of dissing anything. It's just like, just a little more impetus, or a little more sort of enthusiasm can be generated from the kid level. I mean, I have legacy issues, but like kids have to, they know more about what, you know, the Dutch team in the World Cup that is not qualified for the World Cup than they know about, you know, a team that is not their city team.
Let's get a reaction from Anirudh to that. You know, Anirudh, how frustrating is it for you to be a professional soccer player and you see people all around you, kids talking, you know, confidently about their favorite European soccer team or you know, their favorite you know, South American team, and not quite know enough about our own team or our own players. The point made there by Sunil, good, bad, you know, whatever it is, but you know, there's sort of almost indifference to the current soccer team. How frustrating is it for you as a player, for you to see that your captain had to make an emotional appeal to get people to you know, to watch your team play and win?
Yeah, absolutely. But like someone said in the panel just now, that he had to do, because someone somehow or the other, like if we need to encourage people to watch us, it was like we had to do that. Someone from the team had to do, and it was our captain Sunil Chhetri. But obviously, we feel like a disrespect, like when people are talking about other countries and not talking about ours, like India is not playing this. I think so. The main reason is because of the World Cup. The World Cup, which every country is playing World Cup, and it's like a showcase. World Cup is one of the biggest tournament in the world, and because of that, people like it's a craze. And if you, because it's in the mind, I think it's in the mind that if you don't play World Cup, you are not a good team. But it's not like that. Like you can see Italy and Dutch, they haven't qualified for the World Cup. It doesn't mean that they're not a good team. It was that they were unfortunate to qualify. Just like that, you can't say like we can't go to every person and talk about our nation like we can. You have to support us and please support us. Do watch us. It's obviously it's a disrespect for us. Like you're not supporting Indian football, but we need to like somehow or the other we need to show them like we can do it.
Right. Anirudh, just hold that thought, and I know, you know, supporting it, creating a viewer base, making it more interesting is what is going to perhaps make it even more popular. But Viren, in 2014, India ranks 174. As of July 2017, our rank is 96th. Are you going to read that as a sign of progress for football, Viren?
You know, I'm not a big fan of judging anything by rankings. Rankings can always be a little bit of manipulated by playing the right teams and playing the right international matches. So even Prakash Padukone always says, never judge a player by rankings, judge by performances, judge by tournament victories. Judge by quality of performances over a period of time, not really by looking at rankings. In individual sports, rankings can come up by just playing a more number of tournaments as opposed to players from some other countries who don't have the funding to go abroad for tournaments. So I wouldn't keep ranking as the sole parameter for judging the progress of the sport. Having said that, Indian football has progressed. We have had some good victories in the past few years. We had a good long unbeaten streak as well. So those are all good signs. But there should be other parameters, and like Scott mentioned, domestic football, grassroots and junior development, coaching systems, the organization of the national federation, the way national camps are organized. All these parameters should also be taken into consideration while judging the progress of a sport.
Important point you're making, that don't go read too much into these rankings. It's also a function of which teams you play, and that determines how your rankings move. That's an important point. But Scott, coming to you, I think Indrajit made this point about the fact that what we need is one Indian superstar in the sort of global stage, and that could sort of kindle a lot of interest. Should India be more flexible and allow players of Indian origin to represent India? I mean, players like Danny Bath have express that desire to represent India just last year, and yet we sort of have rules that don't allow that to happen. Should we sort of allow foreign players, players of Indian origin who are playing well in sort of global leagues to represent the country? And is that the superstar that we need, which could then trigger a broader interest? Scott?
Well, if I was the national coach, I'd love to have the opportunity to have India of origin players. But the fact is, the rules state that we can't. So we may as well just forget about that. Focus on the 1.3 billion people we have in the country, and start trying to develop our own players. It'd be great to have them as an option, but we haven't got them as an option. So forget about it and start focusing on developing our players. Could you imagine if all the state associations and the I-League clubs and the ISL clubs focused on youth development? I'm sure the respective national age group team coaches would have a bigger pool of players to choose from. At the moment, they haven't.
Okay, on that note, we're going to slip into a short break here on the India development debate. But on the other side, we're going to raise the difficult question. Is the problem the quality of administration when it comes to soccer and sports in general in this country? That's what we're going to debate on the other side. Do stay with us on ET Now.
It's great to be back with you once again on the India development debate, and tonight we've put the spotlight on the beautiful game of soccer and why does India not qualify for the FIFA World Cup. Okay, Alex, is the problem also the quality of sports administration in our country as well? I mean, across the board, you've got politicians heading sport federations with limited understanding of the sports that they head. I wonder if any of them have actually gone ahead and played that sport at all. Now, thankfully, we at least now have a sport minister with some pedigree, but till not so long ago, even that wasn't the case.
Well, it's very important to have someone who has who's heading the federation or any kind of designation, having a background of a sportsman. It could be any sport. That's where the understanding can happen, and they would understand every sport. Like me as a footballer, I would also understand another sport and another sportsman. So it's the administration side. It's important to have ex-footballers part of the federation doing the technical side. We have, I think, India has started the All India Football Federation, and we have a lot of people, ex-players now, who have been part of that. It is helping in a way, but I think more of it, the more people, ex-footballers get involved, it will definitely help with the right state of mind and basically have the same goal. And since India has different cultures, it's very important that everyone has that same aim and work as a unit again. And basically, we can influence, as sportsmen, we can influence the politicians or whoever are there on those panels, and we can influence prosperity of the game.
And Alex is being diplomatic there. Viren, you deal a lot with sports administrators and across across various sports. It's not just soccer, but across the sport. Is Indian sport hostage to political interests? At the end of the day, you pick an association, chances are it will be headed by a politician with limited understanding, with limited will, with limited intent to fix the problems. Is that the root cause of the problem in soccer and, may I say, in Indian sports?
Yeah, like I said at the start, there are almost 65 sports federations in this country which are recognized by the Sports Authority of India and who get funded by the government. And most of these federations, I would say, are not very professionally run, which is putting it very mildly. I can maybe name just a handful of federations that are actually doing a good professional job. I don't know too much about the football federation, but when it comes to Olympic sports, I would say sports like hockey, table tennis, badminton. These are some of the sports that are doing a very good job. But like I said, you could count the names of these federations on your fingers of one hand, and that's just not good enough. And you can't generalize and say just because there are politicians as office bearers of these federations that they are doing a lousy job. I think some of them are doing good jobs, but whether it is a politician or someone else or a businessman or a sports person, and it's not even necessarily true that sports persons will make good administrators. What you need is a good professionally run federation with professional paid administrators, and that is what is lacking in this country. And efficiency is extremely low in most of these federations. And unless we raise the organizational standards, it's going to be very tough to raise the profile and stature of the sport, and therefore it's going to be very difficult to get corporate India to start funding sport, to start sponsoring sports. Today, most of these federations purely depend only on government funding to keep the sport going, and that just cannot be the case in today's we are in 2018, and federations must be able to invest in administrators who can be paid their market value, who then have the ability, the caliber to raise funds, raise sponsorship,
Right.
raise the profile and standard of the sport.
Right. No, I agree with you partly, but I wonder what Indy has to say on this. And Indrajit Hazra, coming to you, do you agree with Viren that it has to do with professionalization and, efficiencies of sport administration more than the people who head it? Because the other view is that why have politicians head these sport authorities? Because they have no clue of what's going on. They've never played that sport. They are just mere titular heads, and, the political interference makes it even worse. What's your take on this, Indy?
See, I think, it goes without saying that's like any bodies, like a sporting body has to be professional, which we sort of lack in many sports. It's not just football. But at the same time, I think, again, we're kind of I'm not saying this is not a big issue. Of course it is. But I think, I don't think it's the sort of root of the, the mother of the problem. I think the problem is manifold, which includes actually a kind of a yet to be kind of de facto enthusiasm demand at school levels. We don't even have a sporting culture in schools. Forget about football. I mean, I don't know, an equivalent of a kick a ball in India initiative by the government. I don't know, but and there are only a handful of clubs, I think, which have the gentleman mentioned Mumbai FC, which have something of a youth program. All the clubs should be having youth programs, and that should actually be taken as, it's not just, having kids kicking about balls, but it's essentially about being a serious program where you take under 10s, under 12s, under 13s, and this is an investment that will, I mean, Scott is right. I mean, this is a long-term investment, but for that, you have to first put the seed in. I don't see that happening in the, in this 1.3 billion people. I mean, if you do the math, it looks very good theoretically that you just technically need 11 players out of 1.3 billion, but there doesn't seem to be any real demand. And the fact that we kind of asked this question, whether India in world football every 4 years, that kind of is a sort of a problem by its own. I mean, we ask this every World Cup, but in between we kind of like, you know, potter around.
Yeah, you put it beautifully there. You know, Scott, do you feel as a country we just lack a long-term vision when it comes to soccer, and may I say even sport? You know, look at other countries, they've had a vision, China, Russia, and work towards it. In India, before every World Cup, before every Olympics, you know, the national conscience suddenly wakes up, and then we all are talking about why don't we have a soccer team? Why aren't we winning enough Olympic gold medals? It's almost as if it, you know, wakes up just before a major event, and then the conscience, the national conscience just completely, you know, dies. It just almost is indifferent to it. Scott.
I know what you're saying, and I can see why you're saying it, but I think the All India Football Federation, and I'm being biased because I was involved with them, but they have strategic plans. They've got a long-term vision for the development of football, but it's going to take time, and they can't do it by themselves. They need the support of the professional clubs. They need the support of the state federations to help implement their strategic plan. I mean, they have a long-term plan, and yes, you've got to tweak it every now and then, but they've got a plan and they're heading towards that plan. But they need the support of the state federations to help them implement that plan. And until such times as they do, they're always going to struggle. They can't do everything from Football House in Delhi. They need the support of the state associations, and there's some really good state associations who are working really hard to develop players in India, and Mizoram comes to mind. But they need to support the national association, until such times as they start doing that, the chances of us achieving our goals in terms of the strategic plans that have been set are slim, because there's a lot of people working really hard in Indian football, but they need more support. They can't do it all from Delhi.
Okay, let me come to you, Anirudh, as somebody who's playing the sport right now, is in Team India. When do you think India can realistically make it to the World Cup? Is 2026 even a possibility? Anirudh?
Yeah, like in this year, like Indian football is growing a lot. Like in 2026, we have hopes, because like this year we U17 team performed very well, and we have started like U13, U15, U18 leagues also. And these days, people are like putting their children from younger age. So I think so. Like we have a hope, because right now the Indian football is developing a lot, and with this, the performances, also the quality of football, it is growing. Mm-hmm. So I think like yes, there is a hope for in the 2026. We have hope that we can qualify for the World Cup.
It is so good to hear a rising Indian football superstar sound hopeful on our chances of 2026. You know, whether we make it or not, we need that hope, we need that spirit, and it's so good to see a current Indian football player sound hopeful. But Alex, if I were to come to you, and very quickly, we're running short of time, 3 things that you think, you believe need to happen for us to be, you know, cheering for Team India in the 2026 World Cup that's going to now happen in US, Mexico and Canada.
Well, I believe that's a lot of energy shown by Anirudh, which is fantastic. But we have to be more realistic in our approach, and I believe we need to start winning the Asian Cup first before we get to the World Cup. Start being the best in Asia. Once we are the best in Asia, then we can move forward. So it's about taking short steps, you know, and progressing rather than just going for the big catch. So I believe realistically the team is shaping up to play the World Cup, but honestly speaking, I don't see it at 2026. I hope if it happens and I'm proved wrong, that'll be fine. But my first belief it's about winning the Asia Cup. So I would like the national team win the Asia Cup, be the best in Asia, and then we progress on to winning the World Cup, to participate in the World Cup.
Oh yes, it's good to be cautious, no harm in dreaming big, and we definitely want the Indian soccer team to set their expectations high, and hopefully we will make it. Timed out then on this leg, unfortunately completely out of time. Can't thank this wonderful panel enough. Viren, Indrajit, Scott, Anirudh, and of course Alex for joining in on this leg and talking about what needs to happen for us to change the face of Indian soccer. Viewers, I'm aware that some of you may be wondering why we're discussing India's soccer ambition on the India development debate tonight, but this is frankly as important a debate as one on India's banking woes or fiscal discipline or its politics. India's development is not just about world-class highways or a booming economy, it's as much about our performance in the global arena of sports. It's a pity that a country that's said to be the youngest nation in the world in less than 3 years doesn't have a world-class sporting culture. At most global events, China and Russia walk away with multiple gold medals, but for India, glory is always evasive.
Indeed, which is why we decided to put the spotlight on sports tonight. This evening, it's football, it could be hockey or badminton or anything else next. After all, for one of the world's most populous countries that boasts of its demographic dividend and its fastest growing economy, apathy towards sports is a challenge that development must address. Business, polity and the Aam Aadmi must find a way to turn our aspirations into reality. This was our effort to begin a debate on this very topic. Thank you very much for being with us.